You're walking through your college campus. Your friend is talking to you about something important, but you're not really hearing them. Your eyes are on your phone. Your mind is somewhere else. By the time the conversation ends, you caught maybe 30% of what they said. Now imagine if I told you that this small moment of not paying attention just cost you something valuable, not just in that relationship, but in your ability to navigate the world. Welcome back. I'm about to show you why observation might be the most underrated superpower you're not using. Here's what most people get wrong about observation. They think it's about having good eyesight. It's not. You can have 20/20 vision and still miss everything that matters. A security guard watches cameras for 8 hours a day, but they're not observing. A detective walks into a crime scene for 2 minutes and sees what everyone else missed in hours. The difference isn't their eyes, it's their mind. There's this famous story about Sherlock Holmes and his method. People always focus on his deductions, but what they miss is that every deduction came from observing details that everyone else overlooked. A person's watch, the mud on their boots, the way they held a pen. Holmes understood something fundamental that most of us never learn. The world is constantly telling you its secrets. You just have to be listening with your eyes. But here's where it gets psychological. Your brain receives 11 million bits of information every second. 11 million. Your conscious mind can only process about 40 to 50 bits. That's a massive filter. So your brain has to decide what matters and what doesn't. And guess what? If you're not intentionally training your observation, your brain decides based on habit, bias, and whatever captures your attention through novelty or threat. Which means you're missing things, important things. Let me ground this in something real. You're in a job interview. The interviewer asks you a question. Most candidates think the question is the test. Wrong. The test is whether you're observing. You notice they glanced at the wall behind you when they asked about your weaknesses. You catch the slight tension in their shoulder when you mention a specific skill. You hear the change in their tone when you say something that actually interests them. These micro details tell you what they really value. While your competition is rehearsing answers, you're gathering intelligence, and that changes the entire dynamic. This is where neuroscience backs something up that Stoic philosophers knew 2,000 years ago. The Stoics, particularly Epictetus, had this concept called prohairesis. It roughly translates to choice or intention. And Epictetus had this line that crushes: events themselves are neither good nor bad. Your perception of events determines their meaning, which means that two people in the exact same situation experience completely different realities based on what they choose to observe and how they choose to interpret it. So observation isn't just about seeing, it's about choosing what to see and what it means. And most people have never made an intentional choice in their life. They're on autopilot. Now here's the deeper, lesser-known insight that most self-improvement content won't tell you. Observation is actually a form of power that costs nothing and takes no credentials. You don't need to be smart. You don't need to be talented. You don't need connections. But if you develop the skill of truly observing people, situations, and systems, you gain an unfair advantage. You become someone who understands dynamics that others miss. You anticipate problems before they happen. You see opportunities in situations others see as dead ends. You understand why people do what they do before they fully understand it themselves. But observation also protects you. Think about it. How many times have you gotten into a conflict because you didn't observe what was actually going on in someone else's emotional state? How many times have you made a decision without observing all the information available? How many times have you stayed in a bad situation because you weren't observing the warning signs? Observation is your defense system against poor choices. So how do you actually train this? First, you have to slow down. In a world that moves at the speed of your feed, slowing down feels like a loss. It's the opposite. You can't observe at speed. When you're in a conversation, your goal isn't to respond. Your goal is to understand. Listen to the words they're using. Notice the words they're not using. Notice their posture, their eye contact, the pace of their speech. Are they rushed or deliberate? Are they confident or uncertain? Second, get curious about details, not the big, obvious stuff. Everyone sees that. Observe the small things, the way someone takes a sip of water when nervous, the pattern in their explanation, whether they make eye contact when talking about something that matters to them versus something they don't care about. These details aren't random, they're data. Third, question your first interpretation. Your brain loves certainty. It wants to interpret something quickly and move on. Resist that. When you observe something about a person or a situation, ask yourself if that interpretation is actually true or if it's just the most convenient explanation. Is that person rude or are they stressed? Are they lazy or do they lack clarity on what needs to happen? Are they selfish or scared? Observation without interpretation is incomplete. Fourth, practice this in low-stakes situations. Don't try this for the first time when your relationship or career depends on it. Start with casual interactions. Watch how people behave at your college. Notice patterns in how different types of people communicate. Build the muscle in safe spaces so it's there when it matters. Here's the profound part. When you start genuinely observing, you stop judging. Most people judge based on limited information. They see someone act a certain way once and decide they know who that person is. But when you observe deeply, you realize that behavior is almost always contextual. People aren't fixed. They're responding to circumstances, emotions, beliefs, and fears. And that understanding changes everything. It kills arrogance. It builds empathy. It makes you smarter. The moral here is this: the world isn't actually mysterious, it's just not paying attention. Most people move through life half asleep, responding to immediate stimuli, never truly seeing what's in front of them. But if you become the person who observes, who listens, who notices the patterns others miss, you're not just improving yourself, you're acquiring a form of intelligence that most people never develop. And in a world where everyone is distracted, the person who is truly paying attention has an advantage that no algorithm can give them. So here's my challenge to you. For the next week, choose one area of your life. Maybe it's your closest relationships. Maybe it's your workplace or classroom. Maybe it's how you interact with strangers. And commit to actually observing, not just looking, not just hearing, but genuinely taking in what's happening. Notice what shifts when you do this. Notice how people respond differently when they feel truly observed versus when they sense you're on autopilot. Notice how much you actually learn about the world and the people in it when you're finally paying attention. And if this resonates with you, if you felt something click when I talked about observation being a real skill that changes everything, then subscribe. Not for more content, though you're going to get that. Subscribe because this is the beginning of you waking up. Subscribe because understanding how to observe is understanding how to actually live.